Everybody here from your site? Thank you. We'll be starting in 1 minute. Thanks. Okay, thank you all for coming to this police board meeting for Thursday, February 25th. Right off the bat, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Any declarations of conflict or pecuniary interest? I see none. Minutes of the previous meeting, sections 31 through 33. Can we move them in block? Can I have a mover? Member Stewart, seconder, Member Ganzel. Any questions or comments on these? All those in favor? Thank you. Carried. Reports from the board chairperson. Okay, right off the bat, I'd make a special recognition. Before we begin the formal portion of our public meeting, I'd like to take a moment and recognize our former member, Andy Petrowski. Andy, if you don't mind standing, I'd appreciate it. Well, read this. Andy served as a member and vice chair of the Police Services Board for the year 2015. He resigned from the board on January 21st to spend more time with his family, especially his elderly father, and I hope he's doing well. Knowing Andy's commitment to public service and especially his commitment to serve in the various roles on the police board, I can appreciate that was a difficult decision for him to make. The board has invited Andy to this meeting today to formally acknowledge his dedication and commitment. Andy, on behalf of the board, it's my pleasure to present with you a commemorative plaque and a gift as a small token of our appreciation. So if you don't mind, come on up, Andy, thanks. Thank you very much. Okay, next on the list, the PSB tour of Niagara Regional Police Service Headquarters District. On February 5th, the board was provided with a tour of new headquarters and two district site located at 5700 Valley Way in Niagara Falls. And I must announce that Vice Chair Ganzel is the first one to have a business card with that address on, unless you can tell me you have different than that. Okay, good. He was proud to be the first one. And that. The board was escorted through the various units that will be housed within this fine facility, as well as provided with an update of the progression of the project since the board's last visit in July of 2015. It was impressive to see the accomplishments that have been made to date as the project moves through its final completion phase. The board looks forward to further updates as we work towards our move to the new location later this year. Vice Chair Ganzel, do you have any comments you'd like to make on this?
Thank you, Chair. I think all of us that had the tour were extremely impressed with what we saw. The last time we were there, I think, was August, September of last year. We are moving, wallboard is painted, carpeting is in, tile is in. There's a lot of what I call fine finishing items which can be fiddly. And I can appreciate there's still a lot of work still to be done, but it's small, it's nothing major. And I think everyone will be extremely impressed, and the service as well as the board will be very proud of when that building opens. So it was an excellent opportunity to see that work in progress.
Thank you for that. Next, the OAPSB Zone 4 meeting on February 9th. The OAPSB Zone 4 held its quarterly meeting in Burlington, where the elections of Zone 4 officers for the 2016-2017 term took place. On behalf of the board, I'd like to congratulate Member Stewart on his re-election as the Zone 4 OAPSB Director, and Ms. Morton on her re-election as Zone 4 Secretary Treasurer. Member Stewart, would you like to say anything? Okay, ma'am. I knew that. Okay, congratulations. Next, the Business Plan Working Committee. On February 18th and 19th, Member Stewart, Chair of the Board's Business Plan Committee, met with Services Business Plan Working Group to continue work on the development of the draft 2016 to 2018 Business Plan to be presented to the Board for further consideration. Any comments on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, just a comment about how rewarding a day it was. It was actually 2 days. It was supposed to be a day and a half, but it went a little longer, and I think that at some point in time, all board members should be able to hear a few of the things that were talked about and brought up from rank and file people in departments, and some of the departments that we don't talk about a lot for good reason, but I think maybe in confidential sometime the board would really benefit from understanding what goes on there and get some true understanding of what the needs are, and what happens there. I think it'd be very worthwhile. And next week I have another Thursday, Friday, 2 days to hear from more departments before we begin to put together the draft plan for the board. So looking forward to that. It was to tell you how good it was very draining. I mean, I went home and my wife said, "What's wrong with you?" And I said, "Well, I just feel like I've been through the ringer." So a lot of very good, valuable stuff. And like I say, I hope that sometime in the near future, the board maybe will hear some of that stuff, even though it's confidential.
Thank you for that, and at your convenience, call a meeting with Deb, and we'll discuss that. Next, the Ministry of Community Safety and Correctional Services notice of public and regional consultation sessions. On February 12th, the Ministry of Community Safety and Correctional Services announced the launch of consultation sessions being offered for input on the development of its strategy for a safer Ontario, the province's new blueprint for effective, sustainable, and community-based policing. Members of the board and the service have been invited to a regional consultation session being held at the Grantham Lions Club in St. Catharines. The session begins at 9 a.m. and will conclude at 4:15. The session is one of 11 full-day regional consultations and 8 public consultations being held across Ontario for discussions on areas where the Police Service Act should be reformed. We look forward to providing valuable input to the ministry in the development of this important strategy, and I thank the Chief for clarifying that this is for lack of better words, by invite only. I had gone out of my way to say it was for everyone to come and make their comments, citizens too, and they will not turn any citizens down coming to the door, so Deb clarified. Now understand, please, that we were notified by this last Thursday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon for a meeting, a full-day meeting this Friday. And we weren't none of us were instructed on what was going on, who was invited, and that I understand is the stakeholders. I'm offended, and I don't mind saying that to them, that our public have to go to Hamilton as they did last night to give their opinions. People in Toronto don't understand, people in Niagara don't go to Hamilton to give their opinions on the police force. We're too big, we should be able to give our own opinions down here. So if they come to the door to make comments here, I think we should, well, I'll meet them, and we'll make sure they get to say their spiel. This is a long item, this opening of the Police Act, and there'll be other times where people make comments, but I hope the government decides to come down to Niagara and meet the public on these items. Last, the upcoming PSB meetings. Next PSB committee meeting, Thursday, March 10th at 8:30 here, and next board meeting, Thursday, March 24th at 8:30 a.m. in the PSB boardroom. Is anybody else really hot in this room? It's really hot, or else it's me. But, Chair, I defer to you, sir.
I'm the chief. And I'm happy to stay here as well. Thank you. Good morning, board. Just run through some of our monthly update on statistics and issues that we normally discuss. And, knock on wood, happy to report so far this year we've not had any homicide occurrences in the region. All previous homicides in 2015 have been solved and are presently at various stages before the courts. During the month of January, there were 15 robberies across the region, 11 of which have been cleared by investigation, and the other 4 are still carrying on with investigation as well. Traffic fatality and serious collision statistics. For the year so far, we've had 1 fatal collision. The comparisons, it's a little early to make year-to-year comparisons, so I'll just deal with what's occurred so far. January 25th of this year, Aberdeen and Bertie Street in Fort Erie, 5 District. We had a fatal collision at 11:29 in the morning. We were dispatched to a call. Male slumped over the wheel of his motor vehicle, came in contact with another parked vehicle. Police arrived. The driver was found to be a VSA, was transported, and the coroner was identified the death as heart disease. So as I think I've explained to you in the past, this still fits the definition of a fatality according to the MTO, but it's not really a traffic fatality. It's a medical incident that resulted in the death of the driver. For some of the in the news, to highlight some of the work that's been done since our last meeting. On November 29th, the service was alerted to a fraud at a local merchant in St. Catharines. A vehicle description was provided, and as a result, patrol officers in the area identified and located 3 males and a female that were arrested without incident. They had a large quantity of merchandise and U.S. counterfeit currency that they were moving across the region. It's also related to St. Catharines, Stony Creek, Mississauga, and Barrie. That resulted in a number of additional charges. Since mid-October of 2015, the service has been investigating a series of break-and-enters into thefts from autos in the area of Montrose Road and Charnwood Avenue in the city of Niagara Falls. As a result, the 2 district officers conducted surveillance of a 41-year-old Niagara Falls male, and on the 26th, arrest was made. He was charged with 12 criminal offenses. Numerous pieces of property have been recovered from the recent break-and-enters in relation to that spree. Throughout January 2016, One District Street Crime was monitoring the movements of suspected drug dealers who were possibly involved in a previous stabbing, as well as a suspect who was a federal parolee. On the 26th, the One District Street Crime, with the assistance of our Emergency Task Unit and the Provincial Repeat Offender Parole Enforcement Squad, which is commonly known as the ROPE Squad, executed 2 search warrants in St. Catharines, and they arrested 3 males and a female, with a total of 12 drug-related offenses, 1 breach of probation, a breach of parole, possession of prohibited weapon, and we also seized a quantity of heroin, crack cocaine, codeine, and marijuana, and a large quantity of Canadian currency. In January, the 3 District Street Crime Unit investigated investigation into the sale of cocaine on the street level in the Welland area. As a result, the search warrant on Wilton Avenue resulted in the seizure of suspected cocaine valued about $5,000, along with $5,000 in Canadian cash and several $1,000s in offense-related property that was recovered. As well, 7 people were arrested and charged with possession of controlled substance and possession for the purpose of trafficking, as well as proceeds of property obtained by crime. On the 31st of January, officers from Fort Erie began an investigation into a series of commercial break-and-enters at a plaza located on Garrison Road. As a result of that investigation, officers arrested a 50-year-old Vancouver male, arrested and charged with 5 counts of break-and-enter and 1 count of failed to comply probation order. And it's not in my notes here, but if I'm not mistaken, I think this fine citizen had some 40 or 50 previous break-and-enter convictions on his criminal record. Further in January, One District Street Crime commenced an investigation, and a 42-year-old St. Catharines male was arrested, located a large quantity, again, of fentanyl patches, oxycodone, cocaine, hash, and Canadian American currency. That person was charged with 7 counts of drug trafficking, as well as a number of other offenses. Good news story. On the 2nd of February, uniformed officers from 6th District in Port Colborne were called to a residence in rural Port Colborne. We learned that an adult woman had wandered away from her home and become disoriented due to pre-existing medical conditions. As a result, a lengthy track by our police service dog Kona, along with his handler Constable Hicks, lasted for 90 minutes through a ground search into the dark, and at about 8:45 p.m., Kona located the woman in the woods. She was carried, and there's no question that this was a life-saving event on that particular evening. It's highly unlikely that she would have survived the night. In the early winter of 2016, the early months of 2016, 3 District Street Crime began another drug investigation into crystal meth from an apartment complex in Welland. As a result, search warrants executed and arrests made, and again recovered $5,500 worth of crystal meth, several $1,000s in suspected fentanyl patches, again, a small amount of a number of other different drugs. A 43-year-old male and a 37-year-old Welland female were charged with 10 related offenses and 1 breach of an undertaking, which means that at least one of those people is already on release before the courts for other criminal offenses. And then also happy to report that in December 2015, the 3 District Detective Office, along with the 2 District Detective Office, had been conducting ongoing investigations. You may recall we'd had a string of armed robberies taking place in pharmacies across the region, and again, primarily involving fentanyl patches. On the 7th of February, 33-year-old male resident of Welland was arrested and charged with 14 criminal offenses in relation to 6 robberies in Welland, Niagara Falls, and Grimsby, and that cleared up that change of what could have become even more potentially violent situations. And I have a couple others that took place in February, which will no doubt be reported in the next meeting, but I just wanted to bring to your attention, we've had yet another life-saving event by our officers. On Monday, a call for a woman you likely heard in the media who fell through the ice on the Welland Canal, and 4 of our officers were responsible, along with the assistance of a citizen, who saved this woman who had been in the water and wedged under the ice for, we believe, up to an hour. Had gone after her dog and fell through, and through some incredible heroic life-saving events, putting their own lives at risk, saved that woman as well. And last of all, there was a shooting at Niagara Falls at Seductions Club, and just an update on that. We'll have a better update for next month, but the victim's vehicle and the victims have been identified and interviewed. I believe they were from Buffalo, and the accused in that case has been identified, and a warrant has been issued and publicly publicized with photographs for the arrest of that person. That's my update for now. Thank you.
Anyone have any questions of the chief? Member Marshall.
Thank you. Chief, now that we don't have any ongoing murder investigations, for which we're all happy, does this mean that the overtime will drop, or are the cases prepared, or is there still more work to be done?
What we won't experience, when those major investigations occur at the beginning, there's always upfront overtime that obviously happens during the first several weeks, depending on the complexity of the investigation. So we're not experiencing that day to day. However, the officers are continuing those investigations. Some of them will be before the courts and require overtime. There will be less, probably considerably less, for those large blocks that start at the beginning. But the homicide investigators are running cases through the courts at all the time while continuing to investigate the existing cases that are underway. And they also involve themselves and assist in other intelligence unit investigations. So overall, the big block that we see at the beginning of investigations isn't occurring at this moment. But again.
And the other thing, you mentioned the officer, you mentioned several officers who were involved in the rescue. I think that's a good news story, and I think the officer has demonstrated yet again that they're willing to put their lives in peril to help with this as citizenry. And I think they should be, as I'm sure you will bring them forward to the board for appreciation. Thank you.
That certainly will, and we thank you for your comments.
Thank you for that. Chief, I have a question about the officers from last year, the 2 incidents, and if you want to get back to us next meeting, that's fine, but the status of the officers that were burned and the status of the officers that were wounded.
Yeah, one of the officers from the violent explosion, Dale Cully, has been back to work since the beginning of the year in full uniformed frontline duties, working out of 8th District. Constable Sheldon is still continuing to recover, still working very hard at getting himself back. He still has a lot of medical issues that need to be taken care of, but he is also, I think I mentioned to this board before, is an amazing man and is making the efforts to virtually volunteer at 8th District when he can, when he's in between appointments and physio that permit. He attends his station to see his fellow workmates, do some work on the computer, keep up on some of his some existing things, and in fact, preparing, I believe I last heard that he's preparing to enter the promotional process for next year. There's a lot of work that needs to be done for that. So he's working very hard to keep himself active and involved and a part of our service, and his colleagues and friends and citizens are doing so as well. So that's the 2 of them. The 4 officers from the shooting in Pelham, some are ready to come back. They're just waiting to complete their SIU interviews. One of the officers that was more severely injured still has a little bit of an medical issue that has to be taken care of. But overall, they're hoping to get them on the road to recover. They've been working very hard to recover, and they're all anxious to get back to work.
If you are in favor of it, and if the officers are in favor of it, we'd like to recognize them at any time. So if you feel, defer to you and their opinions as to whether they want to come here and be recognized.
Certainly enough, and what we generally do as well, we have an awards process where our awards committee makes recommendations for various levels of awards, one of the awards of which comes from the board itself. So we'll go through that process.
Okay, no other questions of the chief? No presentations or deputations? Okay, consent agenda items. I'd like to move items 34 through 42 together. May I have a motion and from Member Castle and seconded by Member Bonham? And then, as I say, that whoever wants to start with questions on it, and we'll take all the questions for that item at the time. Member Barrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With respect to item number 34, the records checks, so through you to staff, thank you for providing that additional information. And I just want to drill down a little bit further because I don't see that it speaks to the wait times in this report. And I was wondering if we can get an update on, if we have it, the specific wait times for the type of check. There's criminal record check, police information check, and police vulnerable sector check. I know they're each different payments if it's for employment or volunteer. And we have heard, well, I certainly have heard some concerns with respect to the waiting times and potential impacts for employment or volunteer opportunities. Just wanted to get a better sense of where that's at.
Yeah, I can speak that a little bit. We did have Mr. Gary Holden, I think, presented to the board last time and reiterated this particular report, I think, was in response to, we were asked just to break down a couple of things. I think we did have some, if I'm correct, had some email traffic that went back and forth in relation to questions raised by yourself and I believe also by the chair. And we'd also heard from people in, through the mayor's office, I believe, in Grimsby, as well as others. So there are issues where we have brought back people on overtime. Gary has had overtime projects on weekends to try and clear some of this backlog. We did at the last board meeting receive authorization from the board, in fact, to increase strength and bring someone, and we're working on that process. I'm not sure if that spot has been filled yet. We had temps there, but it's going to become a full-time position, and a number of other issues. The challenge is that we're strapped by the requirements of the RCMP, and it's the vulnerable screening ones that end up building up that process. If people's names come up where they need the vulnerable screening check, and if there's a close hit, I forget how it works, but I think if it's got the same date of birth or the same name even, then that person has to submit to fingerprints. So then they have to be contacted, come back in, provide fingerprints, which then go to the RCMP, and we need to wait for that response time from them. And then we contact, and then those documents are forwarded back to the public, or directly back to the person who's made the application, not to the employers. There is a bill before, which I think is made second reading, and I don't think Gary's here, but it's before the legislature to make a number of changes to that process, which may help in some cases, but may make further delays in others. When we do get to the new headquarters, we're anticipating that with the new staff and with now we've gone to the full electronic fingerprint exchange, we can make some increases in those. We also do quite a lengthy media campaign and information sessions. We bring people in, all the major agencies, the school boards, the volunteer charity organizations, and give them an information session at least once a year to explain to them the challenges and the delays and how soon they need to get their people in. And we're not here to point the finger at the public, but sometimes the public thinks that if they need a vulnerable screening check, they can come in on Wednesday and pick it up on Friday. And they need it for their employment on Tuesday, or they needed to graduate from a course on Tuesday, which they knew about a long time ago, but for some reason didn't realize how long it would take. So we recognize that there's a challenge. I do have an email from Mr. Holden, which I thought we shared through you, Deb, did we not, in a response to this about wait times and such?
That alternative service.
Yeah, and it was, I think it was the issue, I think through you, Councilor Beck, brought back a request in relation to the Conservation Authority through Sterling Backcheck, is that the name of it still? And as to whether or not that would work for us. And, you know, funny enough, I had met just with Rod Pukula, who's the VP of that particular organization earlier, and it's not anything that works for police services, frankly. It's been looked at by a number. I think there are two or three across the province that use it, but it's not something that's suitable for the work that we need to do, so it's not going to assist in expediting things with that. So there are all kind of tentacles on this. We recognize that. The challenge also is when we get someone will call or people will inquire about somebody, and if we find them down at, you know, number 186 in the pile, it's just not appropriate for us to, and I'm not suggesting anybody's asked that, but sometimes people say, could you just get this one, and they need this? As soon as you pull that out of the pile, these other people 1 to 185 have been waiting their turn and it doesn't get there. So we recognize that there's challenges and issues. We're working very hard to fix them, and we're not different from some other services. I think I'm not sure if it was in your communication, some people will come and they'll say, well, my friend works in Halton, and they can walk in the front door and walk out the back door and have it all done. But they're not comparing apples and oranges, because that's just your basic crim check. We can do some of those, I believe, almost instantly, and they can also do it online. We've been pushing the online application piece as well. So I don't know if that helps, or if you require further information, we can gather some more for you as well.
Thank you, you Chair. Thanks, Chief. No, that helps tremendously. Thanks for that. And just even pointing out the difference between the criminal record check versus the vulnerable sector check, because, many of us have probably heard in Hamilton or Halton, yeah, I can go in and leave and get it same day. So, yeah, I guess it depends on the type of check, number one. Also, and we see in the chart before us, the trending is more and more people are getting these checks done, and it's a good risk mitigation and liability mitigation perspective. And it's certainly, I would encourage people to do that, especially those in the vulnerable sector check, vulnerable sector in general. But can somebody tell me what the approximate wait times are now? And I know you hinted at, Chief, people getting it in early. So today, how long would it take if one submitted a vulnerable sector check? Is it a month and a half?
Yeah, I think we're at about 7 weeks right now for a vulnerable screening check.
Okay, and the criminal record check, you said maybe can be done a lot faster.
Depends, because it can turn into something, right? See, that's a kind of a depends answer, because if there's nothing there, I think it's very quick. It'd be done almost, you can do it online and get a response. Well, let me let Lisa she'll.
Okay, thank you.
We don't keep track of each type, how long it takes. It's about 7 to 8 weeks right now. About 7 weeks we're at right now. I mean, it changes every day depending on what we get in. Like, it's about to come time where the summer vacation people are coming in, and the summer employment, all the kids are going to be coming back from university, so they're all going to be coming in and asking for them. And the Media Relations Office is actually going to start putting out blips to start reminding people to get them in early for summer jobs and stuff like that. But we don't keep track of them separately. The other thing that comes into play is that people need to understand is not just the difficulty of it and if we hit something, but also if you lived out of the city, we have to contact other police services. So we're dependent on other police services getting the information back to us. So we have to send them notification, and they have to send us information back. And it depends on what police service it is, because everyone's under the same strain as we are. We try and get, and they're requesting information from us. So there's all different things that could happen. If you need fingerprints, if you live somewhere else. An easy one where you come in and it's not a vulnerable sector, it can be done on the spot. And like we explained, when we move to a new building, Gary's hope is to have them faster, have it more done on the spot. But at this time, even with the facility we're in, I don't know if any of you have ever seen the Records Center. I know Member Gandel has, but it's not conducive to doing on the spot because of the way it's set up, and it's very it's a difficult place to work right now. So once we move to the new facility, it should be a little bit easier for us to do these faster on the spot. And we're going to have 2 people working at night, so we're going to have shifts as well. So that should help in the new building too.
Okay, thanks for that. I'm satisfied that through our media relations, we're advising folks to get them in earlier, and then at the same time, the board has authorized additional resources so we can start to tackle some of the timing. And I know through you, Chair, staff noted we're not tracking time now, but can we start to track the time per type of application?
We track the time. We actually track the time from beginning to end, but it's of all of them, and it's like an average time. So an average time is about 7 to 8 weeks. We don't track based on which type that's in there. We don't track those individually. I can ask, but I don't want to add anything else that's going to delay the process. So it's all done through a system, a computer system, and at the end they can spit out how long it's taken. But I don't know if they can track by individual, but I will check.
Thanks. I think that's important when people are determining what type of check to get for their organization and the timing that they're facing. Maybe it is simply the criminal record check, and maybe it is a vulnerable sector check. And if there's a 5-week difference between those types of checks, I think we should be able to provide that information so they can make an appropriate decision. So if it's not labor intensive to start identifying them separately, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Anyone else have any comments on 34? Members?
Thank you, Chair, and through you. I find it quite good, and hearing Mr. Holden speak before about, trying to educate people who are demanding checks as to which check is appropriate, as opposed to the highest level of check. And I'm just wondering, because I understand through Mr. Holden, and I've heard it from other sources as well, that this is really driven by insurance companies and liability, because the higher the level of check, the more you're reducing insurance companies' liability. And I'm wondering if, as a group, whether it's provincially or whatever, that we are, not we personally, but probably the group that Gary Holden belongs to is going and dealing with insurance companies to say, because somebody's sweeping a floor at 2 a.m. in a college when nobody's there, they maybe don't need a vulnerable sector check for that maybe the criminal check would be appropriate. In other words, working at it from that angle, I just wondered if that kind of thing is being done at a higher level with insurance companies, just to say, you're causing a lot of grief to manage your risk.
I believe that through the OACP and through the committee that they sit on, they've done an awful lot of work, and Gary's been at the key for it. I think he's actually either testified or monitored hearings before the provincial government as they move forward on legislation. And I do believe that they have raised those issues, but I also think that you hit it on the nail. No disrespect to insurance companies, they don't care, because their job is to mitigate risk, and if mitigating risk means they've got to put the employee at the arena through 2 months of a wait list and pay $75, that satisfies that affects their rate. So I don't think they do, but I do know that that's been brought up, but I'll certainly bring that to the attention of the OACP committee to ensure that they've made some collective response to the insurance bureaus or others. A lot of those companies do, in fact, use the other company as well, if they wish. I know, and this new legislation might impact that. Mr. Pucula told me that like some of their major corporations, major banks, they're satisfied with what they can get from back check. Although that may all change when the new legislation comes in, because in the past what they were able to do is somebody applying for a job at a bank or any major company would fill out the form and they check the list and say, yes, go ahead and do a background check on me, and yes, you can send the results directly to the bank, to the employer. The legislation is going to prohibit that, where the response has to go back to the employee. And in some cases, that's different than what's in other provinces, so that may cause those companies just to use an out-of-province thing. We, unfortunately, are not in a position to do that with the types of checks that we get called upon to perform. And I think I mentioned to the board in the past, ironically, when I lived in a different region and my kids played hockey, I was no hockey star, but I could open the door at one end of the bench really good to let the kids on and off the ice, but I had to go to the local police department. I was a 30-year serving member of the police service and with a clean record, and I had to go pay $75 and wait 5 weeks to get a letter so I could stand open the door for the kids to go on and off the ice. So again, and that was just to ensure, give the insurance to the league and that. So, but I will make sure, I'll have further conversation with Gary on a number of these things and ensure that it's brought up at the provincial level as well.
Member Marshall.
Thank you, Chair. This to Lisa through the chief. Excuse me. On page 2, Lisa, of this report, you've listed the two categories of changes, excuse me, of checks rather, and you say that either $15 or $45. If I do a quick calculation of the two of them at $15, which is the lowest, I get a total of $375 or $375,000, but it doesn't show up on your income statement. You only show $240,000 on the income statement. So can you maybe explain why that's different?
So I'm looking at the details of the revenue and the accident fees Sorry, under general fees, 6690, we had over $5 million in fees last year, and it goes under there. And under, I actually have the number here. I was just working on that. Hold on.
Lisa, I'm sorry, if I go to item 43, excuse me, you show 243,792 as the actual receipts for the year for fees.
Yeah, this goes under.
And I suggest you may want to get back
No,
to us.
it's over, I'm looking at the detail of it, so it's not in that line, it's actually, sorry, it doesn't fall under that line, it falls under the other revenue line, so it's in the, we moved it last year, we consolidated corporate records and central records last year, and it falls right now under the, other revenues, and that's where it falls, in the 1.8 million that's sitting down there. It's not in that fees line.
So we can't tell, though, whether we're recovering our costs to operate these, excuse me, these certificates, or whether it's costing us or we're making money. We don't know.
Oh, I can tell you the details, it's just not in the detail that we gave you, but we have the detail. We're not supposed to make money, we're only supposed to cost recover.
Right.
And we charge based on what is being charged throughout the province, like it's consistent with what's charged throughout the province. If we charge 45 to everyone, we would make more money or we would cost recover more, but I think that there was a general consensus that volunteer ones, it's a service we offer to the public, so it's $15 for volunteers, so we make less. But we do recover quite a bit of money for it. I'm not sure, we've never detailed it down to the line if it's total cost recovery, because you'd have to take into consideration the manager, the receptionist, so we could do that amount of detail for you. But it's not, the 243,000 you see there, it's actually the false alarm fees that we charge, not the records. The records is built into the other lines in there. I can give you more detail if you'd like.
Yes, I would like to know.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
please. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions? Member Bonham?
Yes, I'm noting on page 2, the profile years 2008 to 2015. On criminal record checks, there's been a 491% increase in requests for criminal record checks over fully 7 years. On the vulnerable sector, the increase in requests has been 70%. To me, this has become a cottage industry called record checks. It's currently manifesting itself in the region of Niagara, driving additional employment and therefore additional costs to the ratepayers. Not all of this record requirement is driven by legislation. So my concern is that we need to be compliant with legislation, doing what's absolutely necessary for vulnerable sector, et cetera. But I'd like to see us put some thought into what we're going to do to provide a bit of a pushback, because I believe it's become the flavor of the day and kind of de rigueur for certain segments of the population to assume it's free, nice to have, as opposed to necessary to have, and it's driving costs that are being absorbed by the taxpayer. So I'm questioning whether or not we should be shifting the cost to employers from volunteer groups, so employers are not of the view anymore that it's a free service that's provided somewhere out there in the public sector. I'm also of the opinion that we might want to be examining whether or not the cost for a legislated police background check is somewhat less than one that is not supported by legislation. In other words, if people are doing it because it's nice to have as opposed to necessary to have, then I think, one, the employer should be paying for it, and secondly, the cost should be ramped up, not for the reasons of necessary cost recovery, but to send a message that it's a good service, but it's a service that's tending, at least in my view, to be abused and we should be providing some meaningful pushback on gratuitous requests for police record checks. Thank you.
Any other comments on this? Okay, I have my comments on it, and addressing Member Bonham's point, I get what you're saying on the pushback and that, but I'd hate like heck for us, because we charge too much on it, that somebody's not going to do some checks on it, and then something happens as a result of us raising it. I know there's a happy medium there, and we have to find it. But this was brought up last time, and everybody in politics, everybody around is concerned with jobs. And I'm not sure if it was the chief or I that had the complaint in December about the games, the ladies' winter hockey games in January, of a person that knew that this was coming. They had planned for these hockey games for 6 to 8 months, and in early December, when our average is 50 days, they're asking for records checks on it, and we couldn't do it. And these are local people that were volunteering to work at these games, and we had to say no, or they had to say no because we didn't provide it. In the last week, I've had 2 complaints. One, Member Caslin from long-term care home, which is run by the region, to complain about this. And Chief, I'll be forwarding those emails. I told him to email me rather than just call. But may I ask you, through us, to please, I don't know how the communique goes out at the region, but the Public Health Department, if you don't mind letting them know that we have an average 50 days for record checks, and they can send it to their whole group there as how long these things take. And also, and I plead with the press, if they could do something on this. We'll provide, through the chief's office, with the chief's permission, Gary Holden to give comments, the chief to give comments, whatever they can. But come university time, when they get out in April, or the kids get out to be lifeguards and things like this, if the insurance companies, like I agree with, the insurance companies are demanding a lot of this, these people won't have jobs. And there's no way. It'll be 50 days, and they'll be waiting. So get proactive now on this, or at least know the situation before you refuse the jobs and that. But if somebody could spell it out, we're not wrong here as a police force, and as I explain to people that call me, I tell them it's not just us, it's the RCMP and other things we go through. And we're being inundated with requests for records checks, be it whichever type. So if we could put it out there to everyone through the region, through whatever we do, that I fear what the complaints we're going to have in May and in April, that our kids couldn't get jobs. Member Bonham, you have more to say?
Yes, just to follow up on your comment, and more to the point with regard to the type of request, gratuitous as opposed to supported by legislation. Because people are jumping on the bandwagon, and we don't make any distinction between a request that's supported and required by legislation versus the next request, the gratuitous requests are plugging up the system. And for people to be stopped from getting employment because there's a legislative requirement for a check, and they're in a long queue because some organizations decided willy-nilly to check every clerk that's checking out or operating a cash register at a retail location, to me sounds counterintuitive to the purpose, not serving those that legitimately have a legislated requirement. And perhaps we should be looking at how we slice and dice the applications based on legislated support versus non, having 2 streams. Timeline for legislated would therefore be much less than it is today, and we'd be providing a service that people in politics and in the criminal business have decided that these people absolutely must have a check. So it allows us to bring that forward in a much more timely manner. Thank you.
Thank you. And Gary Holden came to us with, I'll defer to you in a second. Gary Holden came to us with all the gold stars and as one of the best in the business. So I'm sure he'll give his comments. Chief.
Yeah, just through you, Mr. Chair, in relation to that one, Member Bonham, is there are very, very few, I can't think of any that are actually legislated required to get checks. What the legislation speaks to is the procedure and the process that has to be followed once those checks are requested. So it sets rules for the request. But I honestly can't think of any where actual legislation says you must, as a person, have it. You know, a hospital will require, the nursing association may require, if you want to be a nurse, you're going to have it, or if you're going to work in long-term care. In relation to long-term care, Deputy Matthews advises we do have a meeting scheduled with Public Health and at the region for discussions on this very topic coming up soon. But the point is that there are not, I can't think of any, like even here to join the police service, we make our applicants, we'll do background checks on them, but there's nothing legislated that says that you must. The legislation speaks to how the process will run and which which fingerprints have to go where, and it talks about the discussion on this new Bill 163 on where the results of that in interest of privacy can go. So I can't send it back to your employer if you apply, but I give it to you, and it's your job to open the envelope. And if you want to share that with the employer, fine. If you don't like what it says and you don't want anybody else to know, then you tear it up and you don't get employment.
Member Stewart on the same item?
Thank you, Chair. And I was here for in this boardroom when Gary Holden and his department made a presentation to various groups and whatever. And I raised the issue at that time of something that I felt because of some experiences that I've had and that friends have had. And that is the idea of key people in our community that do a lot of volunteering are perpetually coming and getting checks and checks and checks, because every company, every organization wants their own check. And I raised the issue about the possibility of somehow legislatively we could have something like a vulnerable sector card, something like a driver's license. And let me give you an example. A friend of mine whose daughter was applying to go to teachers college has to get a check, vulnerable sector check, to start teachers college. And then at the end, when she was applying for jobs at school boards, then you got to get another one. And then in the summer, she was coaching a soccer team and had to get another one. And there's a person, and I think there was one other one throughout the year, there's a person that had 4 times in a year has to basically say, I'm okay, through the vulnerable sector check. And yet I believe, and I don't know if Gary Holden or his group provincially is maybe advocating legislative, or whether the chiefs are, that there could be some process set up, and even if you pay double for it, to get a card. I mean, we license cab drivers and whatever it is, and we can pull those licenses by any charges that come forward, so it's not a matter of what happened lately. And this type of thing, I think, would reduce significantly the number of people, because I often wonder in this 18,000 people last year, how many duplicates there were? How many people had to come twice or 3 times? And I think that builds a backlog that's probably unnecessary, because they're continually, quote, proving their innocence. And I would think that a process like that provincially, or recognizing a process where someone has a card, they're registered at the police, if something should happen that would alter their status, you could immediately pull their card, just like you could pull a driver's license, or we pull a license from a cab driver or a tow truck driver or anything like that, any licensed person. I think that would get rid of a lot of backlog and make it easier on that group of people in our society who volunteer in lots of circles and are ending up coming numerous times to get checks. So I just wondered, Chief, whether the Chiefs of Police Association has a stance on that, or whether you would know, or we could find out if Gary Holden's provincial group has a stance on that, because Gary did mention that there are other countries that do this type of thing. And I think that would relieve a lot of backlog to the system. But so far I haven't really heard it being talked about, other than my conversations with Gary Holden about it.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if that's been raised. I'm sure they've had some discussion at that level. The challenge with the background checks, too, that we have to keep in mind, though, is they are only accurate and valid for the date on the letter that's given to you. So in your example on the letter piece, if somebody went for that check and on September 1st they get a clear letter and says, I'm clear, and then in September 2nd, to be facetious about it, they want to go volunteer and they need another letter, the September 1st letter is no longer valid to that person. And we use October 1st, give some time. Whatever could have happened during that time period is not reflected in that first piece. The issue raised sounds like it may have a possibility or may have some. The concern is how all that information comes together right across the province would be the issue. So if somebody here has a cottage in Bob Cajun and something occurs up there in a local police service that doesn't come to the attention, there would have to be a way for all of that to come together as well. And I don't know whether maybe it's possible they just take certain offenses that have to be categorized that then somehow get uploaded into a central repository. But I've given Gary Holden a number of questions to raise at his committee, and I'll get an answer on those for you as well.
Member Caslin.
Thank you. A lot of discussion, good discussion about the process, and I tend to agree with some of the comments that have been made that abuse of the process is a matter of convenience for employers just to, with the seemingly due diligence on their part, but really is abuse of the process that we have set up and is confounding the real need for the checks that we're doing. I've experienced it myself in a number of different situations, and I've also witnessed employers using it as just one of those boxes to check that's been set already. So I think education on the part of the process and perhaps some financial liability on the part of the employers that are using it as part of their due diligence is probably worth looking at a little closer.
Thank you for that. One comment about Member Stewart says, I'm in a business group, and we all agreed when we talked, I'll say it was 2 months ago, that if someone comes in for a job and they've had a criminal record check in the last year, and this is just our whole group, that we would accept the criminal record check in the last year, anytime it was, but driver abstracts, they're all fearful of that. If you've had one last week, you get another one now. But that was a lot easier to get right on the internet. Okay, with that, Member Barrick has no other comments on any other consent agenda items. Anyone else here?
Not this one, a different one.
A different one, yes. So Member Ganzel, or Vice Chair Ganzel.
Thank you, Chair. It's item number 40. This deals with the management of police records, the bylaw. There's references in there about purging and things of that nature and destruction lists. What concerns me moving into the new headquarters, and I think we had this discussion when we talked about the off-site storage of older records, put a term on it. Can you ensure that that the records for destruction will be destroyed, so we're not ending up moving a huge amount of records into the new headquarters and then trying to destroy it from there? In other words, something that should be destroyed now and not trucked to Niagara Falls and then destroyed later. If somebody could comment on that, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, we've been actively engaged in exactly that, and we do make some mention of it in the report. We have lists and processes. We have people assigned in each category, each area. Even in the chief's office, for instance, there are many documents. My executive assistant has been designated to go through each and find out what fits with retention. I've had some discussion, in fact, even on these board binders with Ms. Morton on things to ensure that there are electronic copies that have been retained so that we don't need to cart 10 binders of each of this when we go. So yeah, we're well underway in that and working with our retention schedule. We've also had a long-term project going on the scanning of documents. I think we've gone through our safe store. All the boxes have been accounted for, so we're all over this. The last thing I want to do is move boxes of paper into our new building.
Okay, thank you. Where did we end on the block? 43?
42.
42.
So any other questions on item number 40? Go ahead, Member Ganzel.
No, my item is outside of the range, but that was it. Thank you.
Any other consent agenda items? Member Bonham.
Just one question on item number 38. It's the quarterly activities overtime. And on the chart on page 2, I'm not following the literature says despite a decline in sick time report in 2015, when I read across the page here, there certainly has not been a decline in sick time, particularly from 2014 to 2015, some over 5,000 hours additional in the 2015 period versus 2011. And I'm noting that there's been a 71% increase in sickness in the service from 2011 to 2015. So I'm at a loss to understand how the numbers support the statement. But beyond that, specifically with regard to shift shortage leave, I'm wondering, Lisa, if in that leave you're including float as well as stats and coupling it all as leave? Thank you.
Want me to answer? Okay, so obviously I didn't write in a way that you would understand what I was trying to say. So sick time has declined in 2015. This is overtime. So sick time in 2015 is down to 100, down by 2,000, over 2,000 hours from 2016 to 2014, and down over 1,000 hours over the average from 2012 to 2014. So sick time is actually down. And in January of 2016, we're actually down 1,600 hours. Okay, so sick time overall has been down for the past year over year. What I'm trying to say here is, and I didn't know how to write it correctly, is despite sick time being down, we had a lot of people off on WSIB last year from some major incidents. So what happens is when those people are out, so for instance in Grimsby, we had a lot of people out. So what happens is we had it figured out when you're on leave that we would have enough people in not to have to call in on overtime. But because we have 2 less people on a platoon in Grimsby, what would happen was that soon as someone called in sick, or because they were off on WSIB, we were automatically in an overtime situation for the annual leave. We guaranteed them that they had picked the previous year. So that's what I was trying to refer to. Overall, sick time is down in the service, but we did have some major WSIB incidents that kept us short immediately on the front line into an overtime situation. We had that in a few places. When I talk about leave, I always include flow time in there because as per the collective agreement, and I know where you're going with this, you're giving me the eyes, but as per the collective agreement, flow time is taken the same as leave, so we've always grouped them together, and we've never separated them. But yeah, the sick time overall is down, and they are blocked together in there, and you're going to ask me if I can separate them.
I'm just wondering if in leave, you're also including stats?
Yes, on the front line, stats would be included in there, yes.
Any other questions on item 38? Member Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to the chief and perhaps Lisa. I'm just curious, when I look at a possible scenario, and I think it's probably a probable scenario, and you mentioned, say, for example, Grimsby that's staffed at 8, has a minimum of 6, and someone is already on vacation, someone gets called, has to go to court, and then somebody threw up that morning and called in sick. So now you've got an overtime situation for one person, and I'm just wondering how you could reasonably categorize that, because it's really partially because of vacation, it's partially because of the court, and partially because of illness, and the fact that all 3 happen on the same day. And I'm just curious we try to read stuff into this, and I'm not sure I understand how we can really interpret and understand this.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and that is part of the problem in categorizing this way, and as Deputy McCullough just advised, what we try to do is pick the one that is the most accurate, so the one that caused it in the first place, if we can. But at the beginning, when that situation occurs, and I know you all know this as well, the first step isn't to hire an overtime, it's to go with our cross-district deployment, if that's available to us, which in many cases it is, and often cases it's not. So it is a challenge to identify exactly that, which one actually caused the problem. And so we've kind of created a bit of a monster by breaking it down into different categories. Even though we need to, it creates that where it's not always exactly accurate that it's sick, or whether it's leave, or whether it's court, or whether it's overtime. But we're forced into a position to identify what was the deciding factor that made us have to pick up the phone and call somebody and hire them on overtime.
Any other questions on item 38? Member Bonham, you have the floor. Do you have any other ones? Not on 38. Okay, another one?
Yes.
I can go to someone else if you wish. Okay. Any other questions on members? Marshall.
Thank you, Chair. Item 37, excuse me, we have 2 deposits. One is a found property deposit of $6,120, and the other is a tuck shop of $1,973. That found property deposit is
I'm not sure I understand your question. So found property is, as per the general order, all the found and property that we have within the districts, and then if we go to auction or if it's cash and it's found. The tuck shop is only done once a year, and I don't know if you remember a long time ago, I'm not sure if you were on the board, we introduced a tuck shop. So if you go down to the quartermaster stores, so at the end of each year, we figure out the revenue from that tuck shop and we put it into this account.
So that's what the tuck shop revenue is, which I thought, but it's once a year?
It's once a year.
And the found property, did we recently have an auction? Because I don't remember reading about a police auction in the paper.
Well, it doesn't have to just come from a police auction. It could be just monies coming in from the district. So the district's property offices will clean out their safes and figure out what's found, and then they'll send it into finance, and finance will deposit. I'm not sure when the last auction is. I'd have to check. But it could be just cash that comes in from the district's found cash that we find.
We find like $6,000 worth of cash?
I mean, that could be over a time. That could be over like 6 months, because it has to stay in the district property offices for a certain period of time, and then it can be released after a period of time. I don't have the details. Yeah, I can get that more, but I can get you details on it.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Okay, Member Marshall, any other items, or anybody have any questions on 37, by the way? No, any other items, Member Marshall?
Just give me 1 second and I'll see if I do. And it's, no.
Okay, does anyone ever have any other consent agenda items, questions? Okay, all those in favor of receiving this? Carried. To new business, item number 43, the 2015 year-end financial operating results for the Niagara Regional Police Service and Board. Can I have a mover to put on the floor? Member Marshall, seconder. Member Barrick. Any comments or questions on this item? It's a motion in this item. Member Marshall.
Thank you. Excuse me, on Appendix 1, I know I've asked this before, but it was last year. We have other salaries and wages of almost $4 million. What does that include, Lisa, please?
So the other salary wages is special duty, acting, all the premiums, acting premiums, shift premiums, stat holiday premiums go through there. And court time goes through there as well. The biggest cause of the variance is definitely the special duty, which we recover that in revenue later on.
Thank you. Will, excuse me, will we be able to identify the special duty revenue in this report?
You can, if you look at the revenues at the bottom, you will, so on the last page of Appendix 1, you will see service contracts, and you will see other revenues, service contracts. We have an $847,000 surplus in there, and it's included in there. So the other revenue from there offsets the salary from above, the extra salaries from above. But also remember, in there is the deficit from the casino. The money we didn't collect from the casino offset some of that too.
Okay, I can't follow the numbers you were giving me, could you?
Sorry, if you go to the last page of Appendix 1
Yes?
and you look at service contracts under other
Yep.
total revenue,
Yep.
you'll see that we have an you'll see that we have an $847,469 extra funds.
Right?
That's where special duty is in there, and that is the revenue we received from special duty is included in the 7 million. So that surplus offsets part of the other salary and wages deficit from above. And it was actually probably higher than that. The surplus in special duty was probably higher than that, but what happened is that's where the revenue from the casino comes in as well, and that offset it. Because remember, we got a deficit in the casino revenue coming in from the city of Niagara Falls. We budgeted more than we actually got from them.
Right. I'm also interested in the employee benefits are, excuse me, above budget, whereas the salaries are below budget. Did we get higher benefit costs last year?
Yeah, so LTD and life benefits were increased significantly in 15 as compared to 2014. And unfortunately, we didn't get the premium settled until we were into 2015 and the budget was done. So that's where the deficit most of the LTD and life is the cause of most of that deficit.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other comments on this? Member Caslin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just looking at a couple of things on the financials. First, the uniform salaries. I see there's a significant difference of $1.8 million in variance. Just wondering what was driving that difference.
Okay. So the majority of that is from frontline vacancies, so hiring, we budget based on we take the services, we take the actual authorized strength in the service, and then we figure out how much each person's going to make for uniform, and we do an average, and then we budget in each cost center we have budgets based on the average. But what happens is that sometimes there's a delay in hiring, and there's also a delay in step progressions and promotions. So last year we had some senior members who retired, so there was a delay in getting their hiring done. So those all lead into why we have a salary surplus. So delays in hiring, delays in promotion, delays in step progression, that's what causes the surplus.
So is it fair to say then it was in fact just a timing issue?
Yeah, timing of hiring and timing of promotions.
Would those funds be accrued into the following year, or how are they dealt with?
They're not accrued into the following year because they're not going to it's not going to be a retro to them. It's just they don't earn them because they didn't get promoted or they didn't get hired. We use them this year to offset some of our overtime costs, because when you have a delay in hiring or you have vacancies, we end up having frontline shortages, and they were used to cover some of the frontline shortages. You also have acting, which is also in that other salary and wages account. So if there's no promotion, you have people acting. So if a superintendent, we have a vacancy for a month while we're hiring a superintendent, you would have someone acting in that position. So we'd have the cost of that, which would be in another line. It would be in the acting line.
Okay, well, I'm learning as I go along, so
Fine.
thank you. Mr. Chair, I do have another question. The last line on reserves is the reserve summary. I see it's grown from the end of 2014 to the end of 2015 by over $2 million. Is that normal?
So if you look at the contingency reserve, it was planned by this board to put the year-end transfer funds into the contingency reserve of $800,000. So the year-end surplus was put into the contingency reserve, and that is the biggest part of the increase. And then the rest is, a lot of it has to do with the LTA funding, which is long-term accommodation funding, which is our court upload grant, and that was planned by the region per some motions at the region. So the majority of the contingency reserve to deal with unknown factors that we discussed during the budget process, and then the long-term accommodation funding strategy that was planned by the region.
You've kind of touched on part of my next question. How do we determine what adequate reserves are?
So it depends on which individual reserve is. The contingency reserve is determined each year depending, we don't normally keep it that high. It's just kept at an amount to be reasonable in terms of what may be coming up in the future. This year it's based on a lot of unknown factors we have that we would have to discuss in confidential. And then the rest of them are the accumulated sick reserve. There's actually a strategy for that. We have a detailed strategy of what we need to pay out sick reserve. So it's a detailed strategy over the next 10 years to finish the sick leave payouts. The future employee future benefits in WSIB, we actually have some detailed board reports I can provide you on those ones. They are below what we would expect them to be or what you might want them to be, but they're for their expectation of the use of them, they're considered adequate, so I can provide you the details on those ones. And the capital levy, we have a 9-year strategy to deal with capital funding that we deal with during the budget process. The OPTVA reserve is a reserve that's the Ontario Police, I always get this wrong, Police Training Video Video Alliance. And that's a separate group, that's all the Police Services Ontario, so that's theirs, and they determine that. They provide a report once a year. The police service development charges, that comes through the region, so that's determined by the region. And the long-term accommodation strategy has a detailed strategy that was brought to this board a couple times last year.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I trust that you're doing everything right, and I don't need any further information, only to know that there is a mechanism that you have determined what your reserve ought to be, and that you are, I don't see it here, but you are tracking correctly to what you expect your reserves to be, and not too far over, not too far under. I don't know that that's true, but maybe you could let me know, are we tracking okay with our reserves?
Yeah, we're tracking okay with our reserves. There could be some debate as to the employee future benefits in the WSIB. Those are the only two that they're doing an actuarial analysis right now. That's depending on whose opinion you get. Is it adequate? I could be debated on that one. But in terms of the other ones, I would say yes, we're tracking exactly how we'd want to be.
Thank you.
Thank you for the way you answered that too, Lisa. If you want to meet with Member Castellan later or in caucus, we can discuss it, whatever time works, but you can explain it if you don't mind. Any other questions on this item? Okay, I have a couple. Through you, Chief, to Lisa or whoever wants to answer this. There's the three items, the uniforms, the telephones, and the other material supplies and utilities. Telephones stood out to me, and then I realized these are main lines, not cell phones. And I was thinking $93,000 more. My question to you, I'll ask you a series of questions here, Lisa, and then I'll give you the floor to answer. The $93,000, is that an increase on the cost for our whole force for phones? Uniforms, I don't understand why they're up $215,000. Yes. And other material supplies and utilities, I'd like to know what those are defined as. And my last comment is, Chief, I had some ex-officers stop in to see me last week, the week before, and they said to me, it can't be the same. They gave me some criticisms like they all do. And they said, it can't be the same as it was 2 years ago, whereas, and the example they used was, if in Port Colborne you needed a new police shirt, you hopped in your cruiser, you were instructed by your sergeant to hop in your cruiser and drive to Thorold to get fitted for the shirt, and then you got your shirt and you came back down to Thorold. You lost the man for an hour, or whatever. And they said, we got to have a courier that goes around that. I'm not trying to put you on the spot or anything like this, but I got to believe it's better, that our system is better than that for a shirt or something like that. So please, if you can answer those, I'd appreciate it.
I'll answer the last part, and then I'll give the difficult stuff back to Lisa. But uniform size, we have one tailor, we have one storage unit currently, our quartermasters. But for shirts, I got to believe, and I've had it done myself, we do have a courier. If somebody required a shirt, they would first have to justify to their supervisor the reason, because they do get issued a certain amount of equipment. And I mean, they would call QM and tell them what size, and a requisition would be involved, and the shirts would be delivered. If it was some other piece of equipment that required tailoring or such, then we do have to go see our one tailor. But for the most part, we don't have a plethora of traffic going in and out of that place. That's what we use our couriers for. Any equipment that's needed and ordered that can be delivered is delivered to the stations.
Okay, thank you. That was definitely the example. A shirt, and this person had been sent, but that was a couple years ago, prior probably to your tenure. So things have changed.
Yeah, well, the shirts aren't tailored. They're standard size. Like, you know, if you need like I need a 15.5 neck. Brian probably needs about an 18. But
we won't touch us.
We just call them up, and then they just send them out.
Okay, and the other answers, please?
I'm going to expand on his thing. Recently with the EFMS, we put in a new inventory system where people will be ordering eventually, not at this moment, will be ordering their shirts and pants online, and it will be couriered directly to them. So the process should be even streamlined more. A few years ago, we hired a quartermaster who that's the purpose of his new civilian quartermaster, and that's the purpose of his job. So with a new EFMS system, we should be able to streamline the process even more. And people do have to come in if they need it fitted. I'm not saying that happens a lot, but sometimes people gain or lose weight and they need to have it actually, pants and stuff actually fitted, so they come in to see our seamstress, which we've checked, and it's easier for us to employ a seamstress by the hour to actually then to, she's on contract, than to actually send the pants out. The main telephone line, I have to double check because it's the one point of information I don't have. You asked about the uniforms. So the uniforms, we did a huge write-off last year for uniforms, and that was in anticipation of the. We did a huge write-off of uniforms last year because we were cleaning up for the transition to the EFMS system, because we were going to actually use a new inventory tracking system. So we actually cleaned out some old stock, probably stuff that was there still from when you were there. Some old. I didn't mean it that way. I mean like when you were like. Not your age, but when you're a police officer. But we got a new quartermaster, we got a new quartermaster supply clerk. They've gone in, they've done a huge cleanup, and we only want to track in the inventory system what we absolutely need to track. We don't want to track things that don't need to be tracked in the inventory system, which is why we did the huge write-off. And what's there another one?
Other materials, supplies, and utilities.
Most of that is fuel. Oh, no, fuel's not in there, other materials, sorry. I got questions. Okay, so the biggest part of this would be the investigation expense. So we had some huge investigation expenses in there. We had some huge projects last year, and we had bought some, and they had. Now, I'm not going to tell you things. So we had some huge, that's what I'm saying. So we had some major investigations last year, and that's where it net flows through. So all the costs of that investigation, those investigations net flow through them. We do not put them in our salary and benefits lines for like, I can't, I can tell you them in confidential. And then we also got some grant money for special equipment, because special equipment's in there. So we got some grant money for special equipment. So the special equipment grant, the equipment would be bought out of there, and then the grant revenue would be in the grant lines. Okay?
Thank you very much. Okay, any other questions on this item? That's item number 43. All those in favor? Carried. Next item is item number 44, the Versa Term Incorporated NRPS Computer-Aided Dispatch Annual Maintenance and Support Renewal. A mover, please. Member Bonham, a seconder, Member Ganzel. Comments on this item? Member Ganzel.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to the chief and whoever ends up answering. The invoice, which is the last page of the report, shows a total of $242,375.96. In your report, though, you're asking for $218,267. Now, I cannot find, which you say includes HST, but I cannot find in this report where the 242 comes from and how is it related to the 218. So you've got a bill for something, but you report on something totally different in your report piece. If you could explain that, that would be appreciated.
Good morning. Through you, Mr. Chair. In the recommendation, it is including the HST net rebates. So we're actually calculating the unrecoverable HST amount, which is 1.76%. About a year ago, I think there was a recommendation that if we ask for the payment of an invoice, is we include the net rebates. That's why the difference. So we're actually not showing the 13%. It's just an unrecoverable tax amount of 1.76.
Okay, but that still doesn't really answer what I'm getting at. At some point in time, we have to write a check, and that check is going to be written for a total of $242,375, because that's what's on this bill. But in here, you say the cost of a recommendation. You do use the term net rebates as 218. So is the actual check you're writing is 218? Because that's what the rebate is, and like how is the rebate given back to us by Versaterm?
No, so what happens is the regional municipality of Niagara gets a rebate back. So when we enter whenever you're paying an invoice, and you're trying to figure out the cost of an item, you take the amount, the gross pre-tax amount, and you multiply it by 1.0176, and that gives us the actual amount we will pay for that item. That's what's expensed to an expense line. And so what happens is we pay the entire invoice, and then the region of Niagara applies for a rebate back and gets a rebate back for the difference between 1.076 and 13%. And so when it gets entered into the system, the amount that gets entered and applied to our expense account is the 216, not the entire amount. The entire amount will be paid, but we're just asking for the actual cost it is to us. We used to show it gross. And Akram actually used to show it with the total HST included. He used to do the entire amount of the invoice, and he was asked by someone on this board to show a net of rebate. I think it would probably was someone who knew the regional count. It probably was a regional counselor who knows about the rebate. So Akram started changing, and we started changing our board reports to do the net of rebate. We used to do the gross amount, and we changed it because the actual cost of service is only the 216.
218, you mean?
218, sorry. I don't
Okay,
have
so
it in front of me.
218 is actually what the real cost to us, even though we pay that, the region gets that back. Okay, that explains it. Thank you very much.
Any other questions on this item? All those in favor? Carried. Now, the next three items, I'd like to move in block, if I could, 45 to 47, those are donations. And then I'd like to speak to it so I can explain Member Caslin some of the rules, guiding principles we have on this. So may I ask a mover for items 45 to 47 in block? Member Ganzel, seconded by Member Stewart. Member Caslin, these are all donations, and before I ask for questions, we have guiding principles on donations, but some of the criteria that we follow, and certainly we can change with the wind if it makes common sense, but if our police officers are involved in a function, then as support of our police officers, be it playing on a hockey team, helping the community. So, and we have rules under our bylaws here. You can see guiding principles: community relations through involvement with police-related organizations, board police service relations, public education and awareness, and the last is special board police requirements. But our general rule is if our police officers are involved, we wouldn't just donate to a charity out of the blue that has nothing to do with police and things like this. And certainly we look at the monetary amount and that. So those are more or less the rules we've somewhat been following as a board. So do I have any questions, please, on items 45 through 47? Member Marshall.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dick.
On item 45, we're recommending $1,000. That seems like a fairly substantial amount. We don't get a financial statement from this group. We're just going to pass out $1,000. Is there, excuse me. Is there some justification for the size of the donation?
First of all, I mean, I think it's fairly well explained. This is an event, a National Police Memorial event that involves a bicycle ride across the province, a number of different services, in recognition of officers who have lost their life in the line of duty. And it generally commences here. It's commenced in different places. This event was actually born here in the region and is carried on with a number of different services now. So, as it indicates, last year there were 112 cyclists. They commit much of their own time and cost and things, but they're like all rides and long rides. It's a 460-kilometer ride over a number of days, a number of stops. There are supplies that are required for the officers, vehicle, clothing, not clothing, rather some hotel rooms. They commit money of their own. There's stops on the way. There are food and water and such in a supply van that travels with the ride. So it's simply a matter of money. It's $1,000. It's not a large amount. And normally we would indicate what's been given in the past, and I apologize, I don't see that in this report. I don't know if Deb knows that are off her fingertips or.
Item 45.
Sorry, it's on the, it's itemized on the public agenda for that item. Right there is $1,000. It
Yeah.
would be, sorry, is that what you were asking?
For this request, I mean previous years, I think it was the same in previous years.
2013 to 2015 was $1,000.
So it's been that. It's a charitable event recognizing the officers who have lost their lives, and well organized, consumes a considerable amount of time of people that commit their own time to it. So it's simply to commit some off out-of-pocket expenses, and if the board wishes, we'd be happy to report back afterwards how that particular $1,000 was spent. This is just a small portion of the expenses that are incurred.
Any other comments on these donations? All those in favor? Carried. And to item, is that it?
Item number 48.
I'm sorry, item number 48, the Canadian Association of Police Governance Membership Renewal. Mover on this? Member Caslin, seconder, Member Bonham. Any comments on this one? Member Bonham.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if, it says that the CAPG is representing 75% of municipal police services throughout Canada, so there's 25% that have elected not to join. I'm just wondering if we have membership as a matter of form as opposed to substance. In other words, have we had any identifiable and measurable benefit from membership ever? And how do we, like, I'm just wondering what we get out of this, and do you do it as a matter of form, or is there some benefit we're getting back? Have we had some expectations in the past and had some deliverables, or are we just doing it because everybody does it? Thanks.
Okay, I might defer to Deb or Member Stewart if he knows anything about this. Either one want to touch it?
Sure.
Please.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. I think there's tremendous benefit in belonging. This is the national voice for police services boards, and this board has supported it since its inception, way back when. They do communicate on a regular basis with weekly or daily news articles, as well as relevant events. There's also the annual conference that comes up, and that's a huge training opportunity for board members. And I don't want to compare the two associations, but we only have two. We have a provincial and a national. So I feel, you know, there is a tremendous benefit, and I don't know if Member Stewart wants to speak from the provincial perspective. And I think board members have also voiced those same things, the ones that have been out in the past to the conferences. It's an opportunity to network. There's some very valuable sessions and information, as well as there's been some really important positions taken on some very important issues. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and through you. Just to add to that, and I would say this is for both the provincial and the federal organizations, is one of the things they do is to advocate to the various levels of government, in this case the federal government, on behalf of police governance in the country. And I think that's very important, even at the provincial level, to advocate on behalf of the police boards. It doesn't mean every single police board member in the province or the country agrees with the positions, but it is basically the full position. I think the other part, and I know that Ms. Morton had mentioned that at the conferences. I have attended those in the past. I think your percentages, there are still provinces, Quebec being one of them, that does not have citizen governance of police. So therefore they don't have police boards, and therefore they're not part of the organization, even though they have forces. But I think at those conferences, it's a tremendous opportunity as a board member to really get a flavor and an understanding of police governance across the country, talking to people, finding out how other people do things. There's things to be learned of what we'd like to say maybe we should be doing, and other things that you say, boy, they had a bad experience with that, let's not follow down that same road. It's a great opportunity, and the networking part of it. So between networking and learning opportunities and the advocacy they provide at the federal level, it's certainly an organization that I feel is worthy of support.
Is there some kind of documentation that we receive as members that highlights the initiatives undertaken by the CAPG on an annualized basis?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we do receive annual reports. So, I mean, I'd be happy to reproduce that documentation and send that to you if you'd like to review it. And conference reports and those types of things.
Yeah, I'd just like some comfort that we're getting some some benefits from it. I appreciate networking. I'm not suggesting for a minute there isn't benefit to that, but it would be nice to have some delineation of initiatives examined, reviewed, taken up, yada, 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 on an annual basis so that we can satisfy ourselves that there's actually activity that's meaningful, that's been documented, that's been taken up as a on behalf of the member societies or police services boards. Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor of this membership renewal? Carried. Next is the Police Services Board bylaw, user fees and charges, imposition of charges for police services, item number 49. Can I have a mover, please? Member Ganzel, seconded by Member Member Marshall. Any comments or questions on this item? Member Caslin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, I'm still learning here, so just bear with me if I've got this wrong. Looking at Schedule A, and I'm looking at the fees and charges for a special duty. What I'm seeing is 2014 and 2015. Are we approving for 2016?
There is no contract. Do you want to answer that? Yeah, go ahead, Deb.
Through you, Mr. Chair, you are not approving for 2016. That would be a separate report that would come forward at a later date once a contract settlement has been reached for those rates.
Okay, so just to confirm, these are charges to an outside entity that would want to use a police officer?
Correct.
But we're in 2016 now, so if somebody wanted somebody today, what would the rate be? The 2015 rate? Okay, so it's not the rate for 2015, it's the rate established in 2015 moving forward. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions on this item? All those in favor? Carried. New business? There's no other? Any new business from any of the members in public? I have one right now. Chief, I had a number of police officers over the years, because I used to be one, as you know, retired officers, that want to help. So I'd like you to consider, and you and I can get together, of how they can help. And they said it's not a money issue, it's just that we'd like to be able to talk about how we think we can make the force better, not that it's not a great force, and that. And so my question to you, is there a Retired Police Officers Association? Police
Yes, there is.
officers, not just senior officers, but police officers?
Yes, there is, yes,
And of the Niagara Regional Police?
correct.
Good, okay.
It's not aligned particularly directly with the service, but it's more a social organization, I would propose, but it is a group that gets together.
Okay.
I've actually spoken at one of their breakfasts a couple of years ago. I was invited to come and introduce myself, and so I've been there. I think every year we get an invite to an event that they hold.
Okay, if you don't mind, and I'll confer with you afterwards, I'd like to talk to you about, you and I, or just me, but I'd like to talk to these people if I can.
Sure.
And that, so I'm glad to hear it is. That solves that.
I'm advised that maybe Gary Watkinson is the president of that group right now, so I don't know if you know that name, a retired inspector.
Terry Watkins?
Gary Watkinson.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
So-
very good. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Any other new business? Okay, this part of the meeting's adjourned. Everything else is in camera, correct?
Just before you adjourn, I wonder if I might, just for a brief moment, I meant at the beginning, I'd like to introduce a friend and colleague, Shane Williams, who's seated at the back. Shane is an inspector with the Queensland Police in Australia, and he's here visiting with my family, along with his family, for a couple of weeks, and been showing them all the
Shane,
most...
come on up here.
Showing them all the most important things across the province of Ontario, so I thought, you're not getting out of here by missing a board meeting. So, wanted to make
I'd just
sure
like to hear the Australian accent, but please,
Make
come
sure you
on
have
over
the
this mic if
experience.
you don't mind.
And I didn't warn Shane that he was going to be called up on microphone, but
This is what we do. Please hit the button there. You got it? My first question is, have you ever seen snow?
No. Well, sorry, when I landed, yes.
How many years have you been on the force down there?
33.
Any comments of us or anything that we're doing?
We don't have a board. Our commissioner reports directly to the Minister for Police for the state of Queensland. We're quite a we're a state police service. And those who know Australia, we have 7 states, 2 territories. So Queensland is quite large. If I leave Brisbane, do a job in Cairns, I drive for 3 days to get there, do the job, and I drive 3 days back, or we fly. my role, and you know, Jeff's been running me around, and you know, I spoke to your park services in Niagara. So my current role is I'm the counter-terrorism planner for the Commonwealth Games. Part of coming here, whilst it was a holiday to spend some time with Jeff and his family, was also to see how, you know, we can make the games, you know, focus towards what teams may want. So last night went to the Raptors game, back at house, you know, trying to find out what does your basketball team require, what will your various teams require, so that we can fashion our game so it's not a culture shock to them, and that levels of security are maintained. You know, Queensland delivers a high level of security for your team and every other Commonwealth country that attends.
If you don't mind, we're going to ask, anybody have any questions of Sean that's here? Member Ganzel.
Yeah, just a question. Yeah, so the Commonwealth Games are going to be hosted in Queensland in 2017 or?
2018, 4th to the
2018.
15th of April on the Gold Coast. Beautiful place. Please come.
Okay, thank you.
No snow.
So were you here last Tuesday for the snowstorm?
Yes.
Last Tuesday? So impressions of last Tuesday with the snowstorm? Sorry to take your time, guys, but I enjoyed this.
It's like a...
You love snow, don't you?
Oh, I don't mind. The kids love it. It's cold, which is, you know, unfamiliar to us. You know, like I think the lowest we get is probably 9 degrees, and that's cold for us in winter. You know, people put jackets on and cry about how cold it is. Minus 15, minus 20. I'll shut up now and not cry anymore about 9. Look, I think the way it interferes with the traffic, but for us, you know, it'd be like, you know, we'll get a rainstorm that lasts for 2 weeks, and we'll get, you know, 100 inches of rain, and we'll have major flooding for a period of time until it all goes away. Whereas yours will be snow that will take its time to melt and then move into its stream. So, you know, just it's different.
Well, thank you for this, and I hope you have a good stay here. When are you heading back?
I think we've got another 3 or 4 days. We're out on next Monday.
Well, thank you, Chief. Anytime you have somebody like this, please bring them up. We're going to bring them up. You know this for questions and that, but I just love the accent. Do you like the accent that much? Ladies love that
I should have started with
accent.
G'day,
mate. Thank you very much. No other comments or questions? Chief, do you have anything else for the public meeting?
I do not, thank you.
Okay, that's it for this one. Thank you.